Have you ever wondered how rope is made? I'm sure most of us would have a piece of rope in our garage or around our farm or at our business, and it's pretty handy for tying things down or securing a load. Well, today we're going to have a look at how rope is made, and whether it be a cheap nylon rope from a hardware store that's got 3 separate strands of nylon twisted together to make a rope, and as those 3 individual strands are twisted together, it makes a stronger rope. Again, here's another nylon rope. This one's again twisted together from 3 separate strands. Might be something you'd use on your farm or at a business for tying something down. Or even here we've got a wire rope or cable, and this one again is made of 6 separate strands twisted together to make a stronger cable. Something you might use in industry or something like that. But anyway, today we've got the new era rope making machine. This is made in or patented in 1911. So let's take a closer look at how it operates. We can see down here that it's made in Chicago, USA. Patented on July 18, 1911, and I'm sure it was made at some stage after that. So how does it work? Well, you see there's 4 separate hooks where you can attach individual strands of rope to be twisted. Now there's like a planetary gear around the outside, and each one of these hooks has its own gear teeth, and as you crank the handle around the rear of the machine, as you crank the handle, I'll do it from here, you can see the hook doesn't rotate around the outside, but it does rotate, and as it rotates it twists each of the individual strands, and as they twist together they form the rope. So what else do we need to make this, to make rope? Well, we've had this rope making machine since as long as I can remember, but we could never figure out how it operated. And it wasn't until, probably 15 years ago, that I found a book on the internet, and this was one of the missing parts. And it showed me how to make the spreader, or the spacer, that you keep each of the individual strands. This stops them twisting together before the rope is made, and you'll see what I mean in a few minutes when we start making the rope. But that's one of the tools needed to make rope. What else do we need? Well, down this end, okay, so here we've got a snap hook or something similar that has a swivel on it. We need the swivel to be able to allow the rope to untwist behind the rope as it's being made. We've got a pulley system here, and down on the bottom we've got a weight. Now the weight, what the purpose of the weight is to keep tension on the rope as it's being made, because without tension everything becomes slack, and you'll know, or you'll see that as we make the rope, the counterbalance starts to rise, and that's because the rope gets shorter as it's being twisted. So let's go ahead now and have a look what we're going to do. So I've got baling twine here. This is the sort of baling twine that you would use in a square baler to tie up the small squares of hay. So what we've got is we've got black, we've got blue, and this is the nylon hay band, and we're going to use 2 double strands of the black hay band and 1 of the blue. So let's see how we go about making the rope. So first things first, we put a simple loop in this end, and we hook it over our snap hook like that. We head down to our rope making machine and we run it over one of the hooks. Now back to our snap hook, hook that over there. So that's 1 double strand, Now we'll hook onto the top hook. Doesn't really matter which hook you hook onto. And then back to our snap hook. So that's 2 double strands. So what we're going to do now is we will cut that off and tie it up so that we can then run the blue strand, or blue double strand. So we'll just tie this off fairly simply. Now I'm sure the rope making process hasn't changed much over the last 100 years since this rope making machine was made. The equipment no doubt has changed, but I doubt the process will have changed. So again, we'll just put a simple loop in the blue hayband, and we'll hook that onto our snap hook. Now we'll run this down and connect it up to our third hook. We're not using the middle hook. You could run a 4th strand through the middle of the rope, but we're not going to do that today. So back down so that we've got our 3rd double strand. We'll hook that on, get our scissors, and we'll just cut that off. And now we'll just tie that on, and then we can have a look at how we're going to make this rope. Okay, so there we have it. We've got our counterbalance down on the bottom. We've got our pulley here, our snap hook with a swivel here so that this can untwist as we're making the rope. So you can see here we've got a double strand on the top hook, another double strand here, and a blue double strand here. Okay, so let's get our spreader now. As I said before, it's an important part because while we do want the rope to twist, because that's how ropes are made, we want the twist to be behind the spreader and not in front of it. In other words, we don't want the rope to be twisting here, we want the rope to be formed here. Each of these individual strands, they will twist like that and tighten and shorten, but the rope is formed behind the spreader. So let's take a look now. Let's start cranking this handle and see how we go. So you can see the individual strands are being twisted. So we'll crank things up a bit. Now you can see the individual strands have now become, or the double strands have become individual strands as they've been turned and twisted. But let's get windy, get cranking, until we can see that counterbalance starting to lift off the ground. It only takes about 6 minutes to make a rope from start to finish with this rope making machine. It does take quite a few twists. You may wonder why I've got a bit of weight hanging off the handle of the spreader, and that's because the more twists, and as the pressure gets, now you can see we're already starting to make rope. The counterbalance is lifted, and if we move this along, you can see the rope is twisting. Now the reason I've got weights on here is ideally you'd have a second person, one cranking, one holding onto the spreader and moving it along as the twist is formed. Given I don't have that, have a second person, I've just got some weights on there to stop this from twisting over and flipping as the tension gets on the rope. So let's go back and crank it up a little bit more and get this rope made. have to go backwards and forwards a few times just to slide the spreader along. There we go. As we get a little bit closer, I'll be able to, or you would normally, as an operator, be able to use one hand to crank and one hand to move the spreader along. I'm a little bit one-handed today. See that rope getting twisted? It looks nice to have a bit of contrast in the colour. You can see now the twist in each of these double strands. That's actually quite tight now. Now, where we are now, I'll show you. I'll just move our spreader along. Now, we need to adjust our counterweight because it's now nearly reached the top, and we need a little bit more weight as we continue to make this rope. So we've just lowered the counterweight again because the rope is continually being twisted and being shortened. So we've got to have a little bit more room. You can already see the rope is reduced in length, probably more than 2 feet. So we'll just line. Coming along nicely. This is where if I had 2 hands available, I could crank with one and move the spreader along with the other. Did you see how that was pushing the spreader along? Okay, so now what we can do is we can take our spreader out and hang that back up, and we can just crank that until we get it to the end. Okay, let's go and finish this rope off. So we'll grab some scissors and some tape. You can see now we've shortened, the rope is shortened by a good 3 feet, but we've also formed a really nice strong 3-stranded rope. So we'll just tie this off, and then we'll get the gas burner and we'll just sear these. It's a beautiful spring day here. Okay, so now we can unwind just a little to release some of the tension. We'll take the individual strands off the rope making machine. We'll come down and unhook off the snap hook, and we can now gather our rope up and trim the excess off. Okay, so we'll hook our scissors back up And we'll pick up our gas burner. And we'll just sear these ends so that they can't unravel. There we go. Right. So let's have a look at our finished rope. It's come up looking really nice and very strong. No need to go to the shops and buy rope when you can make it at home like that using a, wow, 112-year-old machine. So I think we've done pretty well today making our rope using a 112-year-old rope making machine. As I mentioned, the process of making rope or even cable hasn't changed over the last 100 years or so. The machinery has, but realistically twisting single strands together, multiple single strands together to form a rope makes a really strong rope. And but anyway, I hope you found this video interesting and informative. If you do, you might like to check out some of my other videos on Waterloo Creek on YouTube. Anyway, thanks very much for watching.